What's up, YouTube? So I want to talk about communism. I did live in communism for about 20 years when I was younger, and I did live in Romania, Eastern Europe. Romania, so it's Eastern Bloc, which was all communist. They had been Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Hungary, Poland, all these communists. But I think of all Europe, Eastern Europe, Romania, and perhaps Albania were the worst. So are the worst living conditions, and I'm going to talk about these conditions. If you want to compare, it's just my personal opinion. If you want to compare what's going on in North Korea right now, I would say take what I'm going to describe and multiply by 2 or 3 in the worst way. So I think North Korea is pretty much bigger trouble than what I did live through. So this all ended in 89, if you want, in December 89, when Ceausescu got shot. Like maybe one of the good things Romanian did in the history, on one of the very few dictators that got shot. And he got shot with his wife altogether. They were actually a very strong couple. And as a matter of fact, his wife, at least in the last years, she was ruling the country just like him. She was just splitting the power with him, and she just was. She wasn't smart. He was smart. He was very bright guy, a countryside guy who didn't really go to the school. He barely could talk properly, and perhaps didn't write much better. I think he had got 4 classes, primary classes, but he was smart. That's definitely true. And his wife, Helena, she wasn't smart at all, but she was one of those, I would say, peasant women that when they got the feeling of power, they want it all. So you get the point, perhaps. So this was a pretty rough dictatorship, and we did live under a state of fear. It wasn't a fear like I'm afraid that every second looking at my door or something or walking on the street. It wasn't that kind of fear. It was a fear of knowing that you will do something wrong, you will say something wrong, and you can have problems. And I would say people will joke on Ceausescu. We had a lot of jokes with him. So these kind of things were, let's say, unofficially accepted. But if you were like to walk on the street and just, there's pedestrians walking by the way, and you say Ceausescu is a criminal or Ceausescu is a dictatorship or just down with Ceausescu, straight to the prison and straight to not very friendly, personalized treatment by what we call in Romanian securitate, which means sort of political police. These people were scary, and these people are still alive today, very, very well alive, and almost none of them have been in a trial or punished. They all escaped, and again, not in the nature. They all have today businesses and are doing very, very well and are very arrogant and very like nothing happened during Ceausescu times. But those are the people that were really keeping the population under fear, and that was what happened happens in communism. It's just North Korea or any other country in communism. It's you need to keep the population under fear, like every part of the population. So I'm going to do several episodes of this. See if anybody is watching it. Obviously, personally, I will take it very, very how to say, like going at the beach. I'm going to try to be very relaxed and talk about many things, and I mean many things, from food to transportation to television to whatever else, to earthquakes, if you like that, to holidays and whatnot. So I'm going to get through it all, and just take your time and enjoy if you like, and come back in the next episode. I'm going to link this somewhere in the comment section and put it I guess in a playlist or so, and I'll try to make maybe episodes 30-40 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So let's just get going. So yes, the communists in Romania started after the Second World War. The Romanians did fight along the German Nazis, and then they passed along Soviets, and then we got communism in 65. I mean, in 45 or so, 46 started. Let me just say that generally speaking, communism means no private I will describe the communism just for you in a couple of sentences, then I'll go to my life experience. Communism, principally, I will describe it as a takeover by a bunch of criminals, because oftentimes they are criminals in the sense they are taking illegally the power, but also they are killing people, opponents. They are really eliminating all opposition. So communism is usually a takeover by a bunch of criminals of the power, and oftentimes they will force or just falsify the elections. And also communism, then it becomes a dictatorship, always, without any kind of exception. And those criminals stay in power by fear. So they really keep all the population in fear. It's a dictatorship, and also it's a dictatorship, at least in Romania, that had no private property. So before 45, before the Second World War, Romania was a very prosperous country, not the most one in the Europe, but was just like France, Italy, or something like this. It was completely capitalist. We had properties, we have big industries, we had petroleum, we have gold, we have grain, we have a lot of products and exporting them, and we were doing pretty well, actually. And also the peasants, the countryside, there were big properties, but there were many peasants that had land for themselves, and they would just work the land. Others were working on someone else's land, but there were a lot of private land, private cattle, livestock, and everything. And communism, during when they started, during the first 3-4 years, what they did, they forced everybody, and I mean everybody to the last person. There were very few villages, exception villages, which were remote in the mountains, that they couldn't do it. But every single other person that had the land was given to the state. They took the land from the peasants, I would say peasants. They took the land, they took the industries, they took the small shops, they took absolutely everything. You couldn't have a ice cream shop. Almost the vast majority of the property was privatized, was given to the government, and then you would come back to work into your private industry, which was belonging now to the state. You would come back to work not as the owner, but as a whatever machinery worker, something like this. So you will go back and you lose everything. You didn't get money for it, nothing, and so on. Anyhow, so this is what communism is. Let's just start. Maybe I did mark down several ideas, so I'm going just to do a kind of brainstorm, and I'm going to jump from subject to subject. It's not in a orderly fashion or something like that. So let's just talk about transportation, maybe, because I was going to school, and everybody is going to school in communism, and also school is mandatory. If you don't go to school, they come with the police at home and take you from your home and go bring you to school. But also, everybody had a job. So having a job was mandatory. You were not allowed to stay at home, even if your parents were giving you money, or maybe you had a heritage or something like this. And everybody was forced to go at a very specific place. So there's two options. You go in school and you do a technical college or something like this, and then you go work in the industry, or maybe you go agriculture or something like this, or you go to university and then you go to work as a, I don't know, doctor or engineer and so on. But when you would finish and get your degree, the government would be like a big day. All the students, fresh students, will just get together in a big room, and the government will tell this guy, you, Joe, whatever your name is, you go working in that city at that company, and you are going to have exactly this job. I cannot change it. So the luckiest people where to find a job in their own city or even in the Bucharest, which was the capital. But those were actually people who had connections to who could get a job in the capital of the country. So it's the government who will put you at this place in that company and in that village, maybe for a teacher, or in that small city town. So you had no choice. Everybody got a job, and that's why pro-communists say, "Oh, everybody's working in communism." Yeah, everybody's working, but it's not really doing a real job. I mean, it's not really producing necessarily. Anyhow, so that's how it went for the jobs. And let me just go back, because when I was in school, I had to travel a lot of time by trams. So I did live in Bucharest, which is the capital, and it's a big city. I'd say it has its good parts, but it's not necessarily a city that is that touristic, and also you don't really find signs, directions in English. So you really need to know someone to just move around the city. It's not the best city, I think, in Romania. I would suggest you go to Constanța on the seashore, Timișoara, maybe Cluj-Napoca, other big cities, but also in the smaller cities. Anyhow, so I did live in the capital of the country, and I did have to travel to school with the trams. And these trams were made locally, and these trams were all electric, were run in the middle of the street, and they were not heated, never heated. And also in the country, there was never, I've never heard of air climatization, air cooling device. Not in cars, not in hospitals, not in libraries, not in stores, not in buses, not in nothing. We didn't know it exists, basically, this air climate devices. So in the summer you will sweat and in the winter you will freeze. I mean, in the winter, because we did had like it's a temperate climate, so we did have pretty hot summers and pretty cold winters with snow. I do remember when we would jump in a bus or something like this, in a tram, we hoped it was pretty packed with people, because the only hit we'll have it was from the other people. Basically, it was no hitting whatsoever. And we did have clothes. I do remember we did have reasonable clothes. I did boots, winter boots, stuff like this, that were produced locally. And yeah, we had to travel with these trams to the school. We did have school from 8 a.m. to whatever, maybe 4 p.m. or so, with a break in the middle. It's a school just like any other school. There's nothing special, I would say. The only maybe special thing is that in the front, in each classroom, right above the board where you would write by chalk, you have the portrait of the president, Ceausescu. He's right there in every single room of a school, and also I guess in most offices, industries, in most rooms. He's right there. He's smiling. It's a perhaps a picture of him, but it was a picture when he was younger, and he was always smiling in there. Okay, so I was talking about tramways. And one thing I do remember about this is that the lines, the rails actually were pretty wavy, and the tram will shake all the times like this. And I've seen a couple of times when the tram will just jump off the rails. It's obviously a problem with the quality control over there, but I can tell you it could be really scary. Like, it could be like, the trams were really long, like with accordion sections, like, and the one section will jump off the rails and the other section will keep going on, and hopefully nobody's getting hurt, but yeah, it's not always the case. And I do remember another moment when I was just waiting in the tram station, and I was just spotting watching the rails, and all of a sudden, really out of blue, nobody was there. We could see the metal rail like this, and at a moment I was just starting sparkling. The metal part was just starting sparkling, just like someone was welding it, and it lasts a couple of seconds, like big sparks, just like firework or something. And then I went to take a look at what's happening, basically, because there was nothing else. There was just the rail on the street. and the rail was like cut in two. So it's like, I don't know what phenomenon is that. I guess it's not only in Romania, but it was just the rail, the metal part of the rail would just split in two and just do these sparks, and was pretty impressive. And maybe talking about the winters, because we did have winters and we did have snow, and the population in Romania, most of the people who could afford to own a car was really expensive. If you want, let's say my parents were engineers, and each would earn maybe 3,000 money. It's the Romanian money, which is actually it's called lion. Yeah, it's lion is the exact translation. In Romania, it's leu, L-E-U, which means lion. Well, it wasn't really that much of a lion though. And so each will earn 3,000 every month. And this I would say that was an average salary. So you would expect someone who was selling in the store or something like this to make maybe somewhere near 2,000, and a factory worker, depending, some places would earn really a lot of money compared to an engineer. So a factory worker at some locations, some cities, especially some factories, whereas some industries had really more privilege than other industries, and you would expect someone, a really privileged worker, to make 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, especially if they had night shifts or something like this. They had bonuses and stuff. I can tell you the money wasn't really a problem in that economy, and I'm talking about almost all the people. Like even like if you had a family that both were selling in stores, let's say, the money wasn't really a problem for them. The problem was that they couldn't buy much things with that money, and especially they couldn't find things to buy for that money. I'll explain that maybe in another moment. But I was talking about the winter time, and those people who could afford to buy a car. Maybe I'll talk a bit about the cars. We didn't have, I don't remember seeing winter tires. So we did have a single type of tire, I guess kind of an all season. Now the streets were kind of plowed, but I do remember, like, at this intersection, we didn't have salt or stuff like that. And the intersection was like an ice skate, long, like 20, 30 yards, 20, 30 meters long until the stop sign. And it was really ice skating. I mean, I couldn't cross myself the street. That's how slippery it was. And I do remember those cars coming to a stop, and they should brake like 50 meters ahead or something like this, coming slow, and they will literally skate, perhaps, hopefully, to a stop. It wasn't safe at all. I mean, it wasn't safe in any way. Now the cars, I can tell you, so let's say a average salary, let's say around 3,000 or so, a car will cost 70,000. Now, from an average, if you make 3,000 every month, you will pay, I think, for your home, for an apartment, somewhere around 2,000 a month. So with two person making 6,000, 2,000 for your home, for residency, and some money for the food, but it wasn't that much of a food. Very little money for clothes, and not much else. I think the people would spend most of their money on what you pay every month for your home, a car, payment for a car, and holidays. I can tell you something. There was no such thing as going shopping. The word shopping was not existing, because basically there were no shops. There were no malls. Malls were absolutely non-existent. So you would go most of the times buying in summertime vegetables, fruits and vegetables. That was and perhaps milk in the morning. That was your shopping trip. Perhaps you've seen about North Korea that people would buy food on stamps. So you need to get stamps, and you have a certain amount of maybe of eggs, flour, sugar, milk. I think it wasn't like this. Milk was for free, whatever the amount you want. Butter was on stamps. Pretty much meat obviously was on stamps, and all the food that was meat, eggs, milk, even milk, butter, and more so for, like I said, meat, flour, sugar, and oil. All this you will stay in line, and you will have a certain amount every month. I think the amount was calculated for every person in the house, so depending how many kids you had. And I don't really have numbers. I do remember that you could get pretty much quite a few eggs every month, but perhaps you will get per family, maybe you will get, I'll just throw some numbers in there because I don't remember, probably maybe 2 kilos of sugar for each family, maybe 2 pounds or 1 pound of butter, maybe 3 4 kilos of meat, and that would be meat, pork, beef, chicken, and what I could say, maybe 2 liters of oil and something like that, maybe a couple of kilos of flour. So that was like a rationalized, exactly like it's in Cuba now. But the problem is not this rationalizing, it's that for every single of these portions, you have to spend anywhere from 30 minutes to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours in a line. And I'm really meaning these hours, is not a joke. And this is summer, winter. So what would usually people do is they will just send their grandparents to stay in line, because you would have to go to work for 8 hours. Most of the times, factories will work in 3 shifts, so 8 to 4, 4 to midnight, midnight to 8. So it depends on your turn. So if you work 8 hours in a day, and then you want to go to stay in line for 3 4 hours to get 2 kilos of meat, I mean, at some point you also have kids at home. Like most of the times, if you don't have your grandparents with you, the kids, young kids, will stay at home alone and will come from school alone. So 7 years old, I was traveling alone. Everybody's traveling alone at 7 years to go to school. So you cannot really do a program through the day, stay in the line for food, and then come for work or come from work or something like this. So it was really difficult for parents to match these things together, and oftentimes there will be the grandparents who will stay in line, and you will see these people really staying. I mean, you need to understand what it is to try to stay 1 hour in line, and then try to figure out what's 5 hours, and try to figure out what's doing this every week, say once or twice a week. It depends how much food you want to get. Basically, it's crazy. It's not just inhuman. It's an exercise of such patience and endurance. Imagine you'll do this summer, winter, no escape. And yeah, so it's this is one of the most difficult parts for the adults, for the parents. That's how you get that food. Basically, if you buy maybe milk in the morning, you will wait maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. But everything, eggs, I do remember it was really long, like 30 minutes, 1 hour, maybe more. Butter, the same. Flour, sugar, maybe not so much. Meat was crazy, just crazy. Endless hours. And many times people would just wake up at 2, 3 a.m. and just go and sit with a small chair in front of the store. So they are there when it's opening at 7 or 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. to be the first people in line. So this was the struggle. That's the pain of living in communism. And pretty much the same would do, because we didn't have the stoves. Almost everywhere the stoves were on gas. I think Romania did produce gas, but also would import the Russian gas also. And you need to. Most buildings have they would have this piping for gas, but some apartment blocks would you would need a bottle, a big bottle, and you need to also stay in line for that bottle. And this gas thing actually, it's pretty. I mean, oftentimes those pipings were well done, but what happens is that people would try to heat their homes with those stoves on gas. So we just let the stove run all night long with the doors open and so, because the homes were really not properly heated. And unfortunately, those gas supplies in big apartment blocks were not the best, didn't have the best technology. And at some point in the night, the gas will just be cut off, which means maybe after 30 minutes, 1 hour will restart. But at this point, there's no flame, it's just gas. And I do remember, and this unfortunately happened, and I think you can see even today things like this happening in Russia. I do remember a night, my block apartment was in a big intersection, and I did remember right in the middle of the night, I had all windows closed, and I still remember that, and it was like a big bang, like a big bang. I cannot tell you how strong it was, maybe like a bomb or something like this. And I woke up and I went to windows and look around, nothing there. And then the next day, I don't remember how I find it, but maybe someone told me it happened on that intersection. So was it one intersection farther away, one block, but like a tram intersection, a really big distance away, at least maybe half a mile away or so. And it wasn't a block apartment on the street, it was behind the other block apartment, and you could see that at the third floor or so, or the entire walls have been blown. So there was an explosion, and you could see the entire one level of walls was just not there. You could see inside the home, just like you see in those explosions in Ukraine and buildings. So that explosion, gas explosion, was so huge at that distance, such a bang. I was crazy. And this will happen often, not oftentimes, but this would happen. We knew there was another explosion, but we would never hear about these things on the TV. So let's perhaps give you an idea what was the television in communism. Communism basically is like a big propaganda machine, and you have to, there's all these programs at the radio and on the TV about songs about the president, how amazing he is, how he's we call it this the I don't how would I translate this, maybe the decade, the golden decade or something like this, the best times or whatever accomplishments and so on and so on. So the television, if I remember well, especially the last years before the Ceausescu was killed, the last years we had perhaps every night, this is just my memory, maybe 1 hour of emission, 1 hour of TV. And prior to that, I do remember we had 2 channels, but at the last years it was just 1 channel, 1 hour. I don't remember exactly, maybe for 8 to 9 or so, and then we'll just shut off. So, if you want to see something at the TV, you turn on the TV at 8 and it lasts until 9. And then half of the time would be all this, I think it was like a news, daily news, something like this. It was just dictator news. Ceausescu went to this visit in another country. He was traveling a lot. He would travel a lot. He was really a kind of a businessman. I would describe Ceausescu to be a really like a businessman who owned not a business but a country. I mean, he, politically speaking, he was really a big time worker. He would work from very early morning, really a lot, and he would travel a lot and do all this political connection, economical and stuff. So I think he would have been much better to be born in capitalism, not in communism. He would have done much better. Anyhow, so we see only his face on television, only these kind of chorals that will sing that how brave he is, how exactly like Kim Jong, it's the same thing, same idea. Actually, Ceausescu got this I think it's called how do you call this? I am just missing in English, but it's got this idolatry, if you want, of the president and of the socialist times from Kim, not Kim Jong, perhaps the father of Kim Jong. He traveled to North Korea, and after traveling to North Korea, something in perhaps in late 70s, he started getting really crazy about cult of personality and stuff like this. So that's why on the TV it was almost always about him. Now, because I was a kid, we still within that hour of program, I think we still have 5 minutes of cartoons, and it was Romanian cartoons, like with a small girl, a school girl that would do weird things. Well, not weird, but random things. It was like very naive. But for us, those 5 minutes a day, that was our joy, because what's really at least from a childhood perspective point of view, what I felt I was missing in living in communism, living in those times, I felt like we were missing something to enjoy. I mean, I can tell you that we almost, I think I ate chocolate 3 times, and was really a garbage chocolate. I mean, we did call it chocolate. Perhaps it was a little bit of cocoa on it, but what's fun is that was almost impossible to find it. And it was a Romanian, a small bit of chocolate. That was what I knew as a chocolate back then. And I do remember that was really kind of annoying that I would oftentimes find in those chocolate bits matches, burnt matches. So I can imagine that the guys at the factory would just, there will be maybe a big bin with chocolate spinning in there, whatever, mixing it, and the people would just smoke. I never find cigarettes, just matches. So we'll just throw the match. Perhaps the boss didn't want them to smoke, so we couldn't throw the matches on the floor, so we just throw the matches in the chocolate. And I do remember, I think I found it. I ate a couple of times that chocolate, and at least 2 times I do remember finding a match, a whole match inside the chocolate. I mean, come on, man. It's my couple of times I eating chocolate in my lifetime as a child, and you give me a match with it. I mean, put something else, put like a surprise or something. I don't know whatever. Anyhow, so that's because the worker really didn't care about it. So that's what I was missing as a child. I do really remember this, like not having something fun, not having something to enjoy at the television, not having a cake or something like this, not a cake, but a chocolate, not having a chewing gum. You see, pretty much we never had anything that was an item from the capitalist countries. Those items from chocolate to chewing gum to shoes to hats to whatever you want, a radio or something like this, those were very rare in the country. Now, those were actually did exist, and almost all times they were brought into the black market, because when you have communism, you will have usually in the market, or the products that you can find is locally made products. And always in communism, you will have a black market. That's always there, always, no exception. In Russia, in North Korea, in China, when the China wasn't an open market, you will always have a black market, and you will always have people that run this black market, if you want, a underground economy. So those people got really rich. I mean, there were people in Romania that were selling anything from gasoline, from jeans, from TV screens, from anything on the black market. And those people were never pay taxes. They weren't working for stores, something like this. They would just make that was their own money, plus the money they will have to pay at the borders to pass those things illegally, plus everything they had to pay the chain, everyone in the chain, like the security people who would check these things, they would approve them. And so it's always a black market. And like if my mother would have some earrings or something like this, or a watch or something like this, always from the black market. So that was always how you get yourself some fancier things, if you want, from capitalism. For instance, if people would had coffee, I think they would drink a lot of Nescafe, always from the black market. So we'd pay quite a few more money for this, and these were like not always easy to find. My parents were all working in a big company. It was hydroelectric, so it's a big company. So more chances the workers in that company have contact with the black market. So more chances you get things. If you are in a factory, not many chances to get things, like this. And yeah, so as a child, I was always missing these things. Now, I did remember we did have ice cream, so we did buy ice cream that was really readily available, not really big variety and not very quality, but I'll tell you something about the guy who was selling the ice cream. So we had this kiosk by a school. My block apartment actually was just by a school, and we had this kiosk. And I do remember one of the ice creams would cost 3.75 in the Romanian money, which is not exactly cheap. And 3.75, if you give the guy 4 or 5, he needs to give you change 25, let's call them cents. And the guy will never give you back that change. And that guy would wear a nice coat, a very nice, I mean, he was really nicely dressed. He would make a cut, like 25 cents out of for money, for coins, if you want, every time on every sale. The guy would make a lot of money, and he was what's going on in communists. People are stealing, and I mean they are stealing everything. I mean, I do remember I was once traveling to another city, and that was a city that would produce train wagons, I think. And those wagons for trains would have a certain type of windows, and everybody in the city would they have balcons, and they would just close those balcons with glasses. All these glasses were the windows from the trains. So they were working at a train factory, and they were stealing all those windows and put it at their homes. So everybody in communism is stealing. Like we did had a neighbor who was that lady was working at the bread factory. She would bring to my mother butter stolen from the factory, and sugar and perhaps flour. But I've seen her doing this transaction, butter and sugar. So everybody's stealing because you don't have. I mean, you have, but you have to stay in line. So for hours, so people will start stealing basically anything, shows, whatever you want, and that's how the economy is running basically. So yeah, kids, not much fun, not much things to see at the TV, not much things to eat. We just didn't really have a variety in food, or there was just very very limited choices. But I think in childhood speaking, one of the best things, and it's not necessarily related to communism, but it's just one of the best moments were the holidays. So my parents were fortunate enough to have a car. They bought a car. This car, actually, the Romanian had a car that was produced by Renault. I think it was a Renault. I don't get exactly the number, maybe 12 or so. It was really a car made in the 70s, and they did produce it up to the late 89s, so up to 90s. So it was the same car, a little bit changed, a little bit updated, but not much. And we did spend time in holidays. Usually we'd go to the seashore because we have the Black Sea, and also sometimes we'll go to the mountains. And all Romanians who had a car would just go holidays, usually summer holidays. It's perhaps 3 months holidays for kids, and the parents will take holidays as well, and just do a trip like this. And most of the times we spend time at the seashore, and we did travel with a car and with a tent. We didn't really have money for the hotel. There are hotels, but it was more expensive, and parents just preferred to get and stay by tent. We had big tents that we bought from Polish people. So we had tourists, foreign tourists, usually all from communist countries would get in Romania, and we buy things for the other communist countries tourists, because those countries, the other countries, like I said, Romania was the worst, with perhaps Albania and Bulgaria. But other countries, communist countries, were just doing better, a little bit better, and we had more items, more things to, to enjoy, to purchase, and we would buy them from them. And that's how we got the tent, we got the burner. All these were foreign, not produced in Romania. And we would travel the car. And I do remember we just back in the days, is no longer like this, I think. But we had there was a space on the beach, directly on the beach. The beach was really big, and the seashore is very nice, the Romania seashore. But we would we'd park the car directly on the beach, the tent on the beach, and there were really like a camping with tents like this like there was a space, couple of meters in between each tent, where it's really like a small village, if you want. And I do remember the nights when we said we had these beach chairs, and we always went with another friend of ours, and we would just I do remember those nights, because in those trips my parents will purchase somehow at the black market, will purchase, if I remember well, two things that I was eating only on those moments, special moments. And one thing was kind of Chinese, we call this Chinese sausage, was perhaps very hard to identify what was in those Chinese sausages. So this is China before the market opening, the real communist China back in the days, which was really poor as well. But China would import and export towards the communist countries a few items, and they would export to Romania Chinese sausages. I do remember it was like a small can, and those sausages were just like my finger, about this thick, but hard to say what was made of. Maybe some sort of a chicken subspecies, or maybe some strange pork species, or something like this, something close to that. But the point is that for us was like chewing gold. I mean, for us was such a treat, such a special treat. And we were never ever tried to read the ingredients. I don't even think it was labeled, the ingredients, but it was a delicatessen for us. And I do remember those holidays because of these things. And the other things is that we have these sardines cans too, perhaps from Greece, and also a lemon juice. And I think it's something that you still find today. So just putting that lemon juice on a can of sardines for me was like better than a present day cake, like better than a cake. It was like really a treat. I mean, it was something special for us. So yeah, it gives you an idea the limitations in food, but also in other things that we had. But still, we did have. I mean, it was, despite those limitations. I mean, kids had this kind of inner happiness to themselves. So it's just, we did kind of enjoy our childhood, I think. It's just that we were missing things. We're missing, like, I wouldn't call this basic things. It's just that we're missing things. But other than that, we just had a pretty normal childhood. I mean, it was, people would live in block apartments, like you see if you look in Russian videos. It's just the same thing, with like 10 floors. We would know everybody on the floor, every other kids in the block. And these are also the times where we didn't have internet at all, no computers, no internet, no television, happened to be that. And we would spend whole day outdoors. I mean, we would come from school, we eat something quick, and then go outdoors and just spend with other kids. We was 10, 15, 20 other kids around the block, like girls with girls, boys with boys. But we play games, a lot of games, like we play a lot of soccer, although a soccer ball wasn't that easy to find. We did have these pipes, and we will throw, I'm not exactly good with English names for this, but we'll just blow like this, is like goes like bullets. We'll make two teams and we just fight together like this. So we did invent a lot of things, and we did spend a lot of times also with we played this limited English dictionary. I need to speak three languages, and at some point I do mix things and I do miss things too. But yeah, we will play games till the late in the night. Like parents will start calling us, "Come back home. You need to go bed or something like this to wake up tomorrow for school." So we spend a lot of time outdoors, outside by the block, in the block yard, backyard, and everybody was doing this. I mean, it was nice. It was nice. It was perhaps also pretty healthy, I guess. So we did had this part of the childhood that was, I think, it was pretty normal. All right, let's cut this now from now and return maybe into a future episode. Thanks for watching.